The sky was entirely veiled in clouds. A grey, barely dawning day struggled to break through the night's mist, which had risen and spread between the sunrise and us like a dark wall, dense in places, nearly transparent in others. A vague fear gripped the heart. Might this fog linger until evening, shrouding the world in a mourning veil? From time to time, one's eyes lift to the clouds with anxious longing, as if in silent supplication. Yet, gazing at the pale gaps between the heavy layers of mist, you begin to sense that above them the sun is already illuminating the blue sky and the snow-white surface of the clouds. Hope stirs. You wait. Gradually, the fog fades, thins, seems to melt away. You feel how the sun burns through it, devours it, overwhelms it with its heat. The vast canopy of clouds, too fragile to resist, yields, bends, unravels, and cracks under the relentless pressure of light. Suddenly, a point flares among the clouds, and light glints within it. A breach is torn open, through it slips a slanted, elongated ray, widening as it falls. It seems as though a fire has ignited in the sky. As if a mouth opens, blazing, its lips aflame, spewing torrents of golden light onto the waves. Then, all at once, the cloud vault breaks apart in dozens of places, collapses, and through its many wounds pour glittering arrows, raining down upon the sea, scattering everywhere the radiant joy of the sun. The air, refreshed overnight, carries a gentle tremor of wind that caresses and tickles the sea, making its blue, shimmering surface shiver slightly. Before us, on a broad and towering rocky cone rising as if from the waves, climbs a town with pointed rooftops, painted by human hands in shades of rose, like the horizon tinged by a triumphant dawn. A few blue houses form soft patches that soothe the eye. It feels as though we are gazing upon the chosen dwelling of a fairy-tale princess from the Arabian Nights. This is Porto Maurizio. Seen from the sea, it seems too perfect to approach. Yet I went ashore. The town lay in ruins. Houses appeared scattered across the streets. An entire quarter had collapsed and slid toward the shore, perhaps after an earthquake. Along the slope of the hill, cracked walls with broken ridges piled up in terraces, remnants of old plastered homes, exposed to the sea wind. Their coloring, so lovely from afar and in harmony with the awakening day, up close on these hovels and slums turned into a hideous smear, faded, bleached by the sun, washed away by rain. And through the long streets, the winding passages strewn with stones and debris, drifted a stench indescribable, yet entirely explainable by the sight of the wall's foundations. The smell was so strong, so persistent, so acrid, that I returned to the yacht with disgust and nausea. And yet, this is the administrative center of the province. Stepping onto Italian soil, it greets you like a banner of poverty. Across the bay, on the opposite shore, lies the town of Oneglia, also dirty, terribly foul-smelling, though it appears slightly livelier and not quite so hopelessly destitute. In the gates of the Royal College, flung wide open for the holidays, an old woman sat repairing a revoltingly greasy mattress. We entered the harbour of Savona. Enormous chimneys of factories and iron foundries, fed daily by 4 or 5 English coal steamers, belched twisting clouds of smoke into the sky, which immediately descended upon the city in a rain of black soot. The wind carried this infernal snow from one district to another. Coastal cruisers beware. Do not enter this harbour if you wish to keep the white sails of your little vessels clean. Yet Savona has its charm. It is a quintessential Italian town with narrow, whimsical streets, bustling merchants, and a profusion of fruits laid directly on the ground. Fiery red tomatoes, round pumpkins, black and yellow grapes, translucent, as if infused with light green lettuce hastily picked, its leaves scattered so thickly across the pavement that it seems the street is carpeted in grass. Returning to the yacht, I suddenly saw a Neapolitan balancella moored at the quay, and on its deck, spread along a massive table running the length of the vessel, something extraordinary, like a feast of murderers. Before 30 swarthy sailors lay 60 to 100 quartered watermelons, slashed open, crimson, blood-red like the gore of a crime. Their color stained the entire ship and instantly conjured disturbing images of slaughter, beatings, torn flesh. One might think these cheerful fellows were devouring raw beef, like wild beasts in cages. It was a celebration. Crews from neighboring ships had been invited. Everyone was content. The red caps on their heads were not as red as the flesh of the melon. When night fell, I returned to the city. The sounds of music drew me in, and I wandered through the entire city. Along the way, I came upon a boulevard where groups of bourgeois and common folk strolled leisurely, heading toward an evening concert performed 2 or 3 times a week by the municipal orchestra. In this musical land, even the orchestras of the smallest towns rival the finest theatrical ensembles. I recalled the one I had heard the previous night from the deck of my yacht, a memory that lingered like the gentlest caress ever bestowed upon the ear. The boulevard ended in a square that opened onto the waterfront. There, at the very edge of the sea, in a shadowy space dimly lit by scattered yellow patches of gaslight, the orchestra played. I couldn't say what exactly, but the sound was enchanting. The waves, rather large despite the complete stillness of the sea breeze, rolled onto the shore with a steady, monotonous murmur, as if accompanying the live song of the instruments. And from the sky, tinted a luminous shade of lilac and dusted with golden stars, a soft, dark night descended slowly. It wrapped the silent, whispering crowd in a transparent veil as they wandered gently around the musicians or sat on benches along the boulevard, on boulders by the shore, or on massive beams stacked near the wooden skeleton of a ship still under construction, its sides yet open. I do not know whether the women of Savona are beautiful, but I do know that in the evenings they almost always walk with uncovered heads, holding fans in their hands. There is something mesmerizing in the silent flutter of those wings, white, speckled, black, barely visible, trembling like captive night butterflies. In every passing woman, in every group, again and again you see this flickering of trembling petals, their timid attempt to take flight. They seem to refresh the evening air, infusing it with a coquettish, feminine note that the male heart breathes in with delight. And so, amid this fluttering of fans, among all these uncovered heads of women surrounding me, I surrendered to naive dreams, stirred by memories of fairy tales, just as I used to dream in college, in a cold dormitory, recalling a novel secretly read beneath the desk lid before sleep. Thus, in the depths of my aging heart, poisoned by doubt, the innocent heart of a boy sometimes awakens for a fleeting moment. One of the most beautiful sights in the world is the view of Genoa from the sea. The city rises at the far end of the bay, at the foot of the mountains, as if emerging from the water. Along both shores, curving around it like arms embracing and protecting, lie 15 small towns, neighbors, vassals, servants, whose pale houses reflect and bathe in the sea. To the left of their patroness, Cogoleto, Aranzano, Voltri, Pra, Pegli, Sestri Ponenti, San Pier di Arena; to the right, Sturla, Quarto, Quinto, Nervi, Bogliasco, Sorai, Recco, and Camogli, the final white on the promontory of Portofino, closing the bay from the southeast. Genoa towers above its vast port, perched on the first steps of the Alps, which rise behind it like a colossal wall. On the breakwater stands a tall square tower, a lighthouse known as the Lantern, resembling an impossibly elongated candle. First, you enter the outer harbor, a spacious, well-protected basin where a flotilla of tugboats bustles about. Rounding the eastern mole, you arrive in the main harbor, teeming with ships from the east and south, painted in the most charming hues. tartans, balancelle, megans decorated, with sails and masts crafted with astonishing imagination. On their prows, blue and gilded Madonnas, saints, fantastical beasts, their sacred guardians. This entire fleet, adorned with talismans, lines the quays, their pointed bows turned toward the center of the basin. Beyond them, powerful iron steamships, assigned to various companies, stand tall and narrow, massive yet elegant. Among them are snow-white three-masted ships, brigs dressed like Arabs in dazzling garments that shimmer beneath the sun's rays. If the entrance to the harbor is among the most beautiful, the entrance to the city is among the filthiest. The boulevard along the waterfront is a swamp of refuse, and the narrow, winding streets, squeezed between tall, uneven buildings, reek with nauseating vapors. Genoa evokes the same impression as Florence, and even more so Venice, an aristocratic city fallen into the hands of the rabble. One constantly recalls the stern nobles who fought or traded at sea, and who, with the spoils of war, the profits of commerce, built those marvelous marble palaces that still grace the city's main streets. When you enter these splendid dwellings, now tastelessly painted over by the descendants of proud citizens of the Republic, and compare their style, their courtyards, gardens, porticos, galleries, all their architectural splendor, with the barbaric luxury of modern Parisian mansions, the palaces of millionaires who understand neither beauty nor novelty nor dreams, you begin to grasp how true refinement, the appreciation of graceful forms, the perfection of proportion and line, has vanished from our democratized society, a mix of tasteless financiers and upstarts without tradition. It is striking how banal modern mansions have become. Walk through the old Genoese palaces, and you'll find a procession of grand courtyards with galleries, colonnades, marble staircases of incredible beauty, each conceived and executed by true artists for people of cultivated, discerning taste. Visit the old French chateaux, and you'll see the same striving for constant renewal of style and ornament. Now step inside the most opulent homes of modern Paris. You will, without doubt, admire the curious antique objects, carefully catalogued, numbered, and displayed beneath glass, each arranged according to its market value as determined by experts. But you will hardly be struck by any originality or freshness in the architectural design of the house itself. An architect is commissioned to build a magnificent mansion worth several million francs, yet he receives only 5 to 10% of the budget allocated for decorative work, which he is expected to incorporate into his plans. The upholsterer, under different terms, is entrusted with the interior. Knowing full well the innate lack of artistic taste in the client, these craftsmen dare not propose anything new. They simply repeat what they've done before for others, with only slight variations. After admiring the noble old houses of Genoa and contemplating a few paintings, especially 3 exquisite works by the great Van Dyck, one is left to visit Campo Santo, a modern cemetery, a museum of funerary sculpture. It is perhaps the most original, the strangest, the eeriest, and at the same time the most comical museum in the world. A vast gallery encircles a quadrangular monastic courtyard, covered like snow with white slabs marking the graves of the poor. Along this gallery, one passes a procession of marble bourgeois figures mourning their departed loved ones. What a bizarre sight! The execution of these sculptures reveals remarkable skill, true artistic talent. The texture of dresses, jackets, and trousers is rendered with astonishing precision. I saw, for instance, a moire gown whose shimmering folds were so convincingly sculpted they seemed to ripple with life. And yet, it is hard to imagine anything more grotesque, more vulgar and tasteless than these grieving figures. Who is to blame? The sculptor, who saw nothing in his models' faces but the banality of the bourgeois, and failed to capture that glimmer of humanity so delicately rendered by Flemish painters, even in the plainest and least beautiful subjects. Or the bourgeois himself, whose individuality has been polished away by democratic civilization, like a pebble smoothed by the sea, stripped of the last traces of originality once granted to every social class. The Genos, it seems, are genuinely proud of this bewildering museum, which confounds even the most seasoned critics. From the harbour of Genoa to the promontory of Portofino, between the azure of the sea and the green of the hills, stretches a rosary of towns, a scattering of small houses along the coast. A southeast breeze forces us to tack. It is not strong, but its sudden gusts tilt the yacht, driving it forward in jerks, like a horse that has seized the bit. At the bow, 2 ridges of foam churn like the froth from a sea creature's mouth. Then the wind dies down, and the yacht, calmed, resumes its steady course, sometimes drawing near the Italian shore, sometimes veering away, depending on the tack. Around 2 in the afternoon, the captain, scanning the horizon through binoculars to read the sails and headings of other vessels and gauge the wind's behavior in this region, where every bay has its own temperament, suddenly said, "We must lower the gaff topsail, sir. See those 2 brigs ahead? They've just taken down their upper sails. It must be blowing hard out there." The order was given. The long, swollen sail descended from the masthead, sagged, and slid limply along the foresail, still fluttering like a wounded bird. The foresail already sensed the coming squall. The sea remained nearly smooth. Only here and there did small crests appear. But then, ahead, I saw a patch of white water, so white it looked as though a sheet had been spread across it. It rushed toward us, and when the foaming band was just a few hundred meters away, the yacht's sails shuddered under a violent gust of wind. It tore across the surface, furious and wild, ripping tufts of foam from the sea like a hand plucking down from a swan's breast. All that foam, like torn skin, fluttered, flew, scattered under the shrieking force of the squall. The yacht heeled sharply, its side plunged into the waves that flooded the deck. The shrouds stretched taut, the masts groaned, and the vessel surged forward at a mad gallop, seized by a dizzying, delirious thirst for speed. And truly, what incomparable exhilaration to strain every muscle from ankle to neck, gripping the long iron tiller with both hands, steering this submissive, lifeless creature of wood and canvas through the storm. The squall lasted barely 3/4 of an hour. When the Mediterranean once again turned its serene blue, the air grew so gentle it felt as though the sky had changed its mood. The fury had passed, the morning gloom had lifted, and the sun's laughter spilled freely across the sea. We neared the Cape. At its very tip, at the foot of a sheer cliff, in a place seemingly unreachable, I saw a church and 3 houses. My God, who lives there? What do they do? How do they communicate with the rest of the world? Perhaps only by one of the 2 little boats pulled up on the narrow strip of shore? We rounded the Cape. The coast stretches on to Porto Venere, at the entrance to the Gulf of La Spezia. This entire stretch of the Italian coastline is enchantingly beautiful. In the wide, deep bay that opened before us, we glimpsed Santa Margherita, then Rapallo, Chiavari, and farther still, Sestri Levante. The yacht, having changed tack, glided 2 cable lengths from the cliffs, and there at the tip of the cape we had just rounded a hidden inlet suddenly revealed itself, where the sea flowed inward. Secluded, almost imperceptible, it lay beneath a canopy of pines, olives, and chestnut trees. Around this tranquil cove, arranged like a crescent, nestled the tiny village of Portofino. We drifted slowly through the narrow channel that links the open sea to this charming natural harbor, entering an amphitheater of houses crowned by a forest lush, fresh, and green. All of it was mirrored in the still, circular surface of the water, where a few fishing boats rocked gently, as if dozing. One of them approached. At the oars sat an old man. He greeted us warmly, congratulated us on our safe arrival, pointed out the best place to moor, took our rope to carry ashore, and soon returned offering help, advice, everything we might need. In short, he welcomed us with the true hospitality of a fishing village. He was the harbor master. I don't think I've ever felt such quiet, profound pleasure as I did entering that green bay. Nor have I ever been so deeply enveloped by a sense of peace, serenity, and release from the fruitless bustle in which we live, as in that moment when the sound of the anchor falling announced to my awestruck soul, we had arrived. For a week now, I've been devoted to rowing. The yacht lies motionless on a tiny, tranquil roadstead, while I paddle along the shore in my dinghy, peering into caves where the sea roars in hidden hollows, circling islets with jagged, whimsical outlines that the waves kiss tenderly each time they surge. Gliding over underwater rocks, nearly breaking the surface and draped in seaweed manes, I watch long red and green plants sway beneath me with the faint motion of the tide, among which countless schools of fry dart, hide, and shimmer. They seem like living shoots of silver needles. Looking up toward the coastal cliffs, I see groups of naked boys with sun-bronzed bodies, staring curiously at the unfamiliar wanderer. They are as numerous as a brood of sea-born tritons, just emerged, frolicking and scrambling over the granite shore to breathe the open air. These boys are everywhere in crevices, atop rocks, their slender figures silhouetted against the Italian sky like bronze statuettes. Others sit with legs dangling over the edge of stones, resting between leaps into the water. We left Portofino and headed toward a mooring in Santa Margherita. It is not a harbor, but a deep bay, partially sheltered by a breakwater. The land here is so enchanting that one almost forgets the sea. The town is cradled by a promontory formed by two mountains, between which stretches a valley leading toward Genoa. On either side, countless paths branch off, enclosed by stone walls about a meter high. These narrow, stony trails crisscross, rise and fall, twist left and right, sometimes as trenches, sometimes as stairways dividing countless plots, or rather gardens, where olives, figs, and grapevines grow, the latter twining in red garlands. Through the sun-scorched foliage climbing the trees, one glimpses the infinite distance, the blue sea, crimson headlands, white villages, fir forests on the slopes, and high grey granite peaks. In front of the houses scattered along the way, women sit weaving lace. Almost every doorstep has 2 or 3 craftswomen engaged in this inherited art. Their fingers deftly sort white and black threads, at the ends of which short yellow wooden bobbins dance in constant motion. The lace-makers are often tall and handsome, with proud posture, though slovenly, poorly dressed, and entirely without coquetry. In their veins, it seems, still flows Saracen blood. One day, at the corner of a village street, one of them passed by and I was struck by her beauty, a kind I had perhaps never seen before. Beneath a heavy mass of dark hair, tousled around her forehead and hastily swept back, appeared an elongated, dusky face of Eastern type, the face of a daughter of the Moors, inheriting their regal stride. But the Florentine sun had lent her skin a golden hue. And her eyes, what eyes! Almond-shaped, impenetrably black, they radiated tenderness without looking, from beneath lashes so long and thick I had never seen their like. The skin around her eyes was so dark that, had I not seen her in broad daylight, I might have suspected the artifice of fashionable women. When you meet such a woman, even in rags, you want to seize her, carry her off if only to adorn her, to tell her how beautiful she is, to marvel at her. It matters little that she does not understand the mystery of our admiration. Senseless, like idols, and just as enchanting, They exist only so that rapturous hearts may love them and sing their praises in words worthy of their beauty. And yet, if I were given the choice between the most beautiful of living women and the one painted by Titian, the woman I saw again a week later in the round central hall of the Uffizi in Florence, I would, without hesitation, choose Titian's creation. Florence, the city where I once most longed to live, draws me not only with aesthetic admiration but with something close to sensual yearning. It holds an ineffable charm for the eyes, for the heart, for memory. When I think of it, I see not just its streets, palaces, and museums, but that reclining woman, a dream of corporeal beauty, embodied in a long, dazzling canvas. She is fair-haired, naked, shamelessly serene, as if calmly awake in her repose. After her, after that triumph of seduction, come the Madonnas, tender, chaste. First and foremost, Raphael's Madonnas, with the Goldfinch, the Granduca, the Della Sedia, and others ethereal, mystical, with innocent features and pale hair. And beside them, Madonnas full of vitality, health, and earthly grace. Wandering not only through Florence but across all of Tuscany, this land where the people of the Renaissance scattered their masterpieces with such generosity, one cannot help but ask, what kind of soul did those generations possess, intoxicated by beauty, seized by a mad creative fervor? In the churches of small towns, far from the paths of ordinary tourists, one finds on the choir walls priceless paintings by modest, great masters who never sold their canvases to America, then still undiscovered, and who, having completed their work, departed without dreaming of wealth, serving only art like devout Laborus. This generation, untouched by weakness, left behind nothing mediocre. The same gleam of unfading beauty, born under the painter's brush or the sculptor's chisel, shines through even in the stone facades. Churches and chapels are filled with sculptures by Luca della Robbia, Donatello, Michelangelo, and their bronze doors are the works of Bonanno and Giovanni da Bologna. In the Piazza della Signoria, beneath the Loggia dei Lanzi, under a single portico, stand the Rape of the Sabine Women and Hercules slaying the Centaur by Giovanni da Bologna, Perseus with the head of Medusa by Benvenuto Cellini, Judith and Holofernes by Donatello. Until recently, Michelangelo's David stood there too. But the deeper you venture into this forest of artistic wonders, the more you begin to feel a strange, aching sensation mingling with the joy of contemplation. It is provoked by the contrast between the vulgar, ignorant modern crowd and the places it inhabits. The sensitive, proud, refined spirit of the vanished people who adorned this land with masterpieces no longer stirs the heads beneath round, chocolate-colored hats, no longer ignites indifferent eyes, no longer elevates this dreamless populace above its base desires. On the way back to the coast, I stopped in Pisa to once again gaze upon the cathedral square. Who can explain the poignant, sorrowful charm of cities that have nearly faded away? Such is Pisa. The moment you enter, your soul is seized by a melancholic longing, a lazy desire to stay and simultaneously to flee, to endlessly drink in the wistful sweetness of its air, its sky, its houses, its streets, where the quietest, most silent people in the world reside. The yellow river Arno winds through the city, flowing gently between two high fortress walls. Along them stretch two main boulevards lined with similarly yellow houses, modest hotels, and humble palaces. On the embankment, unexpectedly blocking its path, stands the small chapel of Santa Maria della Spina, built in the style of 13th-century French churches. It rises above the water with its carved silhouette, like a reliquary. Seeing it on the very edge of the river, one might imagine it a Gothic laundry of the Blessed Virgin, where angels come at night to rinse the robes of Madonnas. Via Santa Maria leads to the cathedral square. For those still moved by beauty and the mystical power of art, There is no place on earth more astonishing than this vast, grass-covered square, enclosed on all sides by ancient walls, within which stand the cathedral, the Campo Santo, the baptistery, and the leaning tower. When you reach the edge of this deserted field and suddenly behold these four colossal marble creations, their contours, their color, their proud elegance, you stop, stunned, as before the rarest and grandest spectacle that human art can offer. But soon the cathedral draws all your attention. Its ineffable harmony, its commanding proportions, the splendor of its facade, all of it captivates. It is an 11th century basilica in the Tuscan style, built of white marble with inlays of black and colored stone. Standing before this perfection of Romanesque Italian architecture, you do not feel the vertigo inspired by Gothic cathedrals with their soaring towers, lace-like stonework, and daring height. Here, it is something else: the flawless proportions, the charm of its lines, the facade adorned below with pilasters joined by arcades, and above with four galleries of columns, each tier smaller than the last. And all of it remains in the soul, like the memory of a poem, of a moment of deep emotion. It is useless to describe such things, they must be seen. And seen against the backdrop of this sky classical, of a particular shade of blue, where clouds, curled into silvery masses on the horizon, seem copied by nature from the canvases of Tuscan masters. These painters were realists, steeped in Italian air. Only those who imitated them under foreign suns were false. The bell tower behind the cathedral, forever leaning as if about to fall, mocks our sense of balance. And opposite it, the baptistery rounds its tall, conical dome before the gates of Campo Santo. This ancient cemetery, whose frescoes are considered among the most significant, is surrounded by a gallery full of poignant, melancholic charm. In its center grow two ancient linden trees, whose dense foliage hides so many dry branches that with every gust of wind they produce a strange sound like the clatter of bones. The days slip by, and summer draws to a close. I long to journey once more to a distant land where others have left their traces, perhaps not so well preserved, yet no less eternal. And truly, only they have managed to bestow upon their nation a world exhibition that will be visited for centuries to come. Let us now turn to the channel and select the next work.